September 7th, 2025, a small church in the Scottish Highlands. The cameras capture a moment that will define British politics for months to come. King Charles III walks into Crathie Kirk, and waiting inside is the most embattled, most unpopular Prime Minister in British history. His deputy has just resigned in disgrace. His cabinet is in shambles. His government is collapsing. And now the King of England is about to sit beside him in full view of the world's media. Was this a rescue mission, a symbolic lifeline thrown to a drowning politician? Or was it simply constitutional duty, a monarch doing what he must, regardless of how uncomfortable it makes him? Because what happened in that church, and more importantly what happened in the 7 days leading up to it, reveals everything you need to know about power, weakness, and the brutal reality of British politics in 2025. By the end of this video, you'll understand why this wasn't just a church service. It was a carefully calculated political moment that both men desperately needed for very different reasons. And the truth behind those pews is far more explosive than anyone dared to report. To understand why that church appearance mattered so much, you need to understand the absolute chaos that preceded it. Let me take you back exactly 1 week. September 1st, 2025. Westminster returns from summer recess, and Keir Starmer's government immediately faces what can only be described as the worst week of his political life. Day 1, rumors start circulating. Journalists hear whispers. Opposition MPs smell blood in the water. Something big is about to drop, and it involves someone at the very top of government. Day 3, the bomb explodes. Angela Rayner, Britain's deputy prime minister, resigned after a report found she had breached the ministerial code by not paying enough stamp duty on her second home. But this wasn't just any scandal. This was devastating. Rayner admitted she paid as much as £40,000 less stamp duty on the purchase than she should have done. Think about that number, £40,000. That's more than most British families earn in an entire year. And the person who didn't pay it? The deputy prime minister responsible for housing policy. The hypocrisy was suffocating. Here was a woman who'd built her entire political brand on attacking wealthy tax dodgers, on demanding the rich pay their fair share, on championing working-class values. Her decision to pay only £30,000 of stamp duty instead of the £70,000 required for a second property left Starmer confronting accusations of double standards as he asked voters to accept tax hikes at a time when his own deputy had underpaid her own liabilities. The political optics were catastrophic. Every speech Labour had given about tax fairness now rang hollow. Every attack on Conservative corruption now looked like projection. Every promise about restoring integrity to government was revealed as empty words. But Angela Rayner wasn't just another cabinet minister. She was Starmer's deputy, his connection to Labour's working-class base, the authentic voice that balanced his technocratic image. Losing her wasn't just losing a cabinet position, it was losing Labour's soul. In her resignation letter, she said she deeply regretted what she maintained was an error. But error is a generous word for systematically underpaying taxes by £40,000. Tax experts say Rayner will likely now face a fine of up to £12,000 from His Majesty's Revenue and Customs, Britain's tax authority. So not only did she resign in disgrace, she'll be paying for it financially for years to come. Day 4. Panic at Downing Street. Her resignation pushed UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer to undertake a significant reshuffle of his cabinet. Ministers who'd barely settled into their roles were suddenly moved, promoted, or pushed aside. David Lammy, who had been serving as the UK's foreign minister, was appointed as Rayner's replacement as deputy prime minister. The reshuffle itself became another crisis. Ministers learning their fates from media reports, parliamentary private secretaries resigning in protest. The government that promised stability and competence looked chaotic and desperate. Days 5 through 7. The media bloodbath. Every news channel, every newspaper, every social media platform dissected the scandal. Opposition MPs lined up to mock Starmer's claims of restoring integrity.
Starmer faced a torrid week that left his leadership under mounting pressure. His approval ratings, already the worst of any modern prime minister, plummeted further. By Sunday morning, September 7th, 2025, Starmer needed something, anything to suggest he was still in control, still legitimate, still deserving of the office he held. He needed a symbol of stability when everything around him was falling apart. He needed the king.
King Charles was joined at church by Sir Keir Starmer and his wife, Lady Victoria, today, as the Prime Minister seeks to put a chaotic return to Westminster behind him. That sentence, reported across every major outlet, tells you everything about how desperate Starmer's position had become. Sir Keir and Lady Victoria were spotted arriving at Crathie Kirk near the royal palace of Balmoral on Sunday. The photographers were ready. The media circus was in full swing, and every political analyst in Britain understood exactly what they were witnessing. King Charles and Queen Camilla attended a Sunday service at Crathie Kirk near Balmoral. They were joined by Prime Minister Keir Starmer and his wife, Lady Victoria Starmer, among other notable guests. The setting was perfect, historic, traditional, dignified. Everything Starmer's emerment wasn't at that moment. But here's what made this moment constitutionally significant. The king was marking 3 years since his accession and was with the prime minister at a service where prayers were said for the anniversary. It was also, of course, the 3rd anniversary of the death of Queen Elizabeth II, with her late majesty also remembered. So this wasn't just any Sunday service. This was a moment of profound royal significance. The king remembering his mother, marking his 3rd year on the throne at his private Scottish retreat, and he allowed Starmer to be part of it. The symbolism was impossible to miss. A prime minister whose government was collapsing, whose deputy had just resigned in disgrace, whose authority was shattered, standing beside the one institution in Britain whose authority could never be questioned, the crown. Photographers captured every angle. Starmer and his wife arriving at the church, looking exhausted but attempting dignity. The king, composed and regal as always. Queen Camilla playing her supporting role perfectly. The Prime Minister and his wife attended the Crathie Kirk service alongside members of the royal family. For those few hours, Starmer wasn't a failed politician. He was the Prime Minister attending a service with his king. The image projected stability, continuity, legitimacy, everything his government desperately lacked. But was King Charles doing this willingly, or was he trapped by constitutional duty? Here's the constitutional reality that most people don't understand. King Charles had no choice. As a constitutional monarch, he must work with whoever commands a majority in Parliament. And despite his catastrophic unpopularity, despite his collapsing government, despite everything going wrong, Keir Starmer still has that majority. The king cannot choose to support or oppose a prime minister based on personal preference or political performance. His role is to remain above politics, to represent continuity and stability regardless of which party is in power. Appearing with Starmer at church wasn't a political statement, it was constitutional obligation. But here's where it gets complicated. By appearing with Starmer at this precise moment, during this specific crisis, the king was inevitably making a political statement, whether he intended or not. Because in modern politics, every image is interpreted, every gesture analyzed, every appearance weaponized. Supporters of Starmer would see the church appearance as royal confidence. The king standing beside the prime minister suggests legitimacy and stability. Critics would see it as the king being forced to prop up a failed government, the monarchy dragged into supporting an unpopular leader because constitutional duty requires it. The truth is probably somewhere in between. Charles was doing his duty, but he also understands the symbolic power of the monarchy. By allowing Starmer to be photographed with him at this moment, he was providing something valuable, a visual representation of institutional continuity during political chaos. Think about what those photographs showed. The king, calm and composed, marking significant personal and royal anniversaries. The prime minister, present and respectful, participating in national remembrance. To anyone who didn't follow the details of British politics, it looked like business as usual. A functioning government, a stable monarchy, a nation carrying on. And that's exactly what both men needed the world to see.
But symbols only work if people believe in them. And increasingly, the British public wasn't buying it. Social media immediately began dissecting the church appearance. Critics mocked it as a photo op, with Starmer using the king as a prop to distract from his government's failures. Hiding behind the monarchy became a common accusation. Using the king to save his career was another frequent comment. The opposition had a field day. Conservative MPs suggested Starmer was clinging to royal legitimacy because he has no democratic legitimacy. Reform UK accused him of disrespecting the king by turning a private memorial service into a political stunt. Even some Labour supporters felt uncomfortable. The optics of a struggling prime minister appearing beside the king just days after his deputy resigned in a tax scandal felt desperate. It looked like a man who'd run out of political options and was now relying on royal association to maintain relevance. And here's the brutal truth. The church appearance changed nothing. When Starmer returned to Westminster the following Monday, he faced the same problems. His cabinet was still in disarray. His approval ratings were still catastrophic. The Rayner scandal still dominated headlines. His government was still viewed as incompetent and hypocritical. The symbolic moment at Crathie Kirk provided temporary cover, a brief respite from the political storm. But it couldn't solve the fundamental problem. Starmer's government had lost public trust, and no amount of royal association could restore it. So was the church appearance a symbolic rescue or constitutional duty? The answer is both, and that's what makes it so revealing about modern British politics. For King Charles, it was duty. He had no choice but to maintain his relationship with the elected prime minister regardless of political circumstances. The monarchy survives by staying above the chaos, by representing continuity when everything else is falling apart. For Starmer, it was absolutely a rescue mission. He needed that photograph, that moment, that association with the one British institution that still commands respect. He needed to be seen with someone whose authority couldn't be questioned, hoping some of that legitimacy would transfer to him. But here's what both men probably understood but couldn't acknowledge. This moment revealed how weak they both actually are. Starmer's weakness is obvious. A prime minister so unpopular, so embattled, that he needs to be photographed with the king just to maintain the appearance of legitimacy is a prime minister in serious trouble. But Charles's weakness is more subtle. Despite all the pageantry, all the tradition, all the symbolic power of the monarchy, he ultimately cannot fix Britain's political crisis. He can attend church services, provide symbolic moments, represent continuity, but he cannot make Starmer popular, cannot heal Labour's divisions, cannot solve the problems destroying public trust in government. The monarchy's power is entirely symbolic, and when those symbols are used to prop up failing politicians, the symbols themselves become tarnished.
September 7th, 2025, Crathie Kirk, Scotland. A king marking the anniversary of his mother's death and his own accession. A prime minister desperately trying to survive the worst week of his political life. A church service that became a political moment neither man could fully control. Was it symbolic rescue? Yes. Starmer needed that moment more than he's probably ever needed anything in his political career. Was it constitutional duty? Absolutely. The king had no choice but to maintain his relationship with a prime minister, regardless of how uncomfortable the circumstances. But most importantly, it was a revelation. It showed us a government so weak it relies on royal association for legitimacy. A monarchy so constrained by constitutional duty that it must appear beside failing politicians. And a British political system where symbols matter more than substance, where photographs can temporarily mask reality but cannot change it. Following a torrid week that left his leadership under mounting pressure, Starmer got his photograph with the king. He got his moment of apparent stability. He got to stand beside an institution that still commands respect. But when the cameras left, when the church service ended, when Monday morning came, he still faced the same crisis. And no amount of royal symbolism could save him from that. What do you think? Was the king right to appear with Starmer, or should he have found a way to avoid the photo op? Does royal association help or hurt struggling politicians? Share your thoughts below, because this story is about more than one church service. It's about how power really works in modern Britain, and why symbols alone can never replace substance.